Devil fruits in One Piece have some of the craziest powers in anime, but let's be real, not every devil fruit is a winner. In fact, some are so laughably bad, you'd sell them to the world government for 500,000 berries. So today, we'll be talking about 22 of the worst devil fruits in One Piece. We'll start with the goofy, harmless ones, basically the you could do worse tier, and work our way up to the truly awful. And trust me, the last three are straight up criminal. Let's start with Alvida's smooth fruit. Now, this paramecia type fruit gives the user a slippery, slick body. Okay, I won't lie, this is actually pretty useful because a slippery body means most attacks and objects would just slide right off. You're basically immune to blunt force and projectiles. Plus, it's also great for a glow up. I mean, Alvida went from, well, Big Mom to Miss Universe overnight. But of course, there are some drawbacks that make it useless for any serious person in One Piece. Smoker was easily able to get around Alvida's defense buff and restrain her with his smoke. And although her powers transfer to her clothes, they don't transfer to her shoes, which makes sense because you can't be slipping all the time. But this also makes it clear that this power is more about inconvenience than anything else for a serious person. She has to always take off her shoes if she wants to skate away with her slippery powers. But then she has to put them back on or she won't be able to walk normally and just slide away like a bar of soap. Like we saw when Smoker restrained her, things like explosions, heat, and gas don't care how smooth your skin is. You're still getting cooked. Next up, we've got the mole fruit, which was eaten by Miss Merry Christmas. This fruit lets you turn into a mole or a mole-human hybrid and burrow underground. And I get it, digging holes could be useful for sneak attacks or escaping, except in a real fight, you'll spend most of your time popping up like a whack-a-mole. Exactly, digging is cool for Minecraft, but not so much for the grand line. Honestly, this fruit is situational at best, in the sense that it only works on actual ground, not when you're sailing on ships. And since the burrow makes noise and vibrations, someone with observation hockey, or even a basic armament hockey punch that shakes the ground can just casually flush you out. Plus, it basically turns you into an animal known for its terrible vision. So unless your enemies politely stand still above one of your holes, you're going to pop out in the wrong spot half the time. And the worst part is that all the tunnels are connected, which means any large-scale attack sent into the tunnels, like an explosion or flooding them with water, would instantly cook the mole. Now, if you thought this fruit was buggy, trust me, it only gets buggier from here. And I mean that literally, because the third fruit on our list is the bug fruit, model hornet. This one was eaten by a dwarf named Bion. It allows her to turn into a hornet, which gives her the ability to fly and presumably sting. The problem is, we never actually see her do much with it, so it's unclear how effective that stinger even is. Honestly, the fact that she still carries a lance suggests her hornet form isn't threatening on its own. Plus, like every bug, especially hornets, she's still vulnerable to things like smoke, wind, or even heavy rain that interfere with flight. So while the fruit doesn't sound too bad at first, it's just not impressive compared to other zones. We don't even know if it shrinks the user down since Bian stays the same size even when she transforms. Alright, enough about insects. Let's move on to birds. Specifically, the bird fruit model albatross, eaten by Morgans, the big news bird president of the World Economy newspaper. Honestly, I have no idea what Oda was going for with this one. The albatross is a legendary bird known for its incredible gliding ability, and this zone should, in theory, let Morgans fly, except it doesn't. In chapter 872, we see that Morgans literally can't fly, and that's just weird. What's the point of a bird zone if it doesn't let you fly? Just some basic zone endurance. Or maybe we only think that because we only ever see Morgans in his hybrid form. That's not it either, because Pell and Marco are both able to fly even in their hybrid forms. Maybe Oda tried to be clever with this fruit because albatrosses are considered symbols of bad luck in some myths. Eating a bird zone that doesn't let you fly? Yeah, that's definitely bad luck. Before we continue, do me a quick favor, guys. We're working really hard to reach 100,000 subscribers and get that silver play button by the end of the year. So hit that subscribe button if you enjoy our content. It would mean the world to me. Our next devil fruit only kicks in after you're already dead. It's Brook's revive fruit. Now, Brook is awesome, but his fruit is kind of weird. It gave him a second life. Literally, he died and his soul got a do-over at finding his body, which is an amazing cheat death move. Plus, we've seen so many cool soul-related abilities from Brook. But, and this is important, the fruit does absolutely nothing until you die. Exactly. When Brook first ate it, he was just a normal guy who couldn't swim. Then, when he finally died, it took him an entire year just to find his body again. But imagine if you eat this fruit and just never find your body again for whatever reason. Yeah, it's not something I'd want to risk. And even the powers Brook developed, like his soul music, are things he created through his own creativity. So this fruit really depends on the user's imagination and skills. Brook made the absolute most of it, but for most people, this fruit would feel more like a curse, especially if they never reunite with their body after death. Plus, it doesn't make you immortal. You'll still face your second death eventually, and even while you're alive again, you're not going to use the fruit even 5% as well as Brook does. Yes, not everyone is creative with their power. Take for example Mr. 5 and his Bomb Bomb fruit. This fruit allows the user to make any part of their body explode, whether it's their nose, their breath, or their limbs. It also makes you immune to your own explosions. Honestly, that's not bad at all. The problem, however, is that the strength of his explosions was, well, not that great in the grand scheme of things. Early on in the Grand Line, blowing up a building with a booger was crazy. But as the story goes on, characters who casually wipe out fleets or even crater islands become very common. Compared to that, Mr. 5's bombs are just firecrackers. Sure, a stronger user can make stronger explosions, but the fruit isn't nearly as versatile as it sounds. The explosions only happen when he triggers them. Yes, he doesn't automatically blow up when hit. This means faster or stronger opponents can just smack him around before he can react, as we saw with both Zoro and Luffy beating him up without any exploding. On top of that, even though he's immune to his own blasts, he's still vulnerable to regular fire or blunt attacks. Okay, how about Kanjuro's Brush fruit? The variety of this fruit is legitimately incredible. It allows you to bring your drawings to life using ink, and we saw just how powerful that can be when Kanjuro finally started using his right hand to draw. Here's the thing, this fruit is absolutely broken in the hands of a proper artist. The quality of the drawing directly determines how strong the creation is. When Kanjuro was using his left hand and half-assing his drawings, all of his creations were pathetic and all over the place. His bird could barely fly, his dragon looked like a sad noodle, and his food tasted awful. It made the fruit look like a complete joke. Only later did we find out he was a skilled artist and could use it properly, like creating massive ink monsters. And that just proves the point. This fruit is totally user dependent. In the hands of someone with no artistic skill, it's basically worthless. All you get is a chance to doodle before someone cuts you down. Now, if Kanjuro's Brush fruit is about turning art into reality, Iola's art fruit is about turning reality into art. This fruit allows its user to turn any person or object into abstract art. Sounds scary, right? Because if you or your weapon gets turned into art, you also lose all functionality. A sword, for example, would lose its sharpness. Even Nami's climb attack became useless, but I bet she couldn't do much against someone with Haki, which for some reason, Oda still hasn't given to the weaker Straw Hats. Plus, if you knock her out, all of her art reverts back to normal. Honestly, you may be thinking I'm being too harsh on this fruit, but just think about it. Miss Golden Week was able to pull off literal hypnosis with her artistic skills, all without a devil fruit. She simply used her brush and paint and somehow was more impressive than the actual art fruit. Anyway, enough about doodles. Let's talk about the bubble fruit, which was eaten by Caulifla. This paramecia type fruit allows the user to emit soap bubbles that can literally clean off a person's strength. And we saw her do exactly that when she scrubbed Sanji's strength right off of him and left him weak, shiny, and slippery. That's actually pretty broken. She can literally drain your power by coating you in bubbles. She can also turn the bubbles into a giant soap bar to defend herself from attacks. But the weakness of this fruit is just as silly. You see, the bubbles can be washed away by water, which immediately restores the victim's strength. So the power to make your opponent vulnerable is rendered completely useless by a simple bucket of water, and a strong gust of wind can just as easily blow her bubbles away. Any half-competent opponent, or say Nami with a rain cloud, could nullify her pretty bubbles. It's basically the power of being a professional cleaner. No wonder Oda had her cleaning the streets as a side hustle during the CP9's independent report cover story. Next one on our list is Wapple's Munch fruit, and honestly, this one is a mess. This fruit lets him eat literally anything, be it metal, wood, weapons, or even people, and then fuse whatever he ate into his body. He can turn his arm into a cannon if he ate one, merge creatures and weapons into chimeras, or even slim himself down by eating his own body weight. Later on, he actually used it to become a toy tycoon, which says a lot about where his fruit shines. But here's why it's a problem. Wapple mostly used it to binge and turn into the goofy Wapple House form that a pre-Alabasta Luffy flattened with zero effort. The power depends entirely on creativity and what's available to eat. If there's nothing useful around, you got nothing. And the fruit comes with a huge drawback. The user is cursed with constant hunger that is never ever satisfied. Plus, Wapple can only access what he's eaten for 24 hours, and certain things, like Luffy's rubber body, can't be swallowed. In theory, this could be insane in the hands of someone like Frankie, who could munch tech and become a walking battleship. Even Usopp could go far with a fruit like this, but the hunger side effect is real. Now, if Wapple turned his stomach into a trash bin, this next guy turned his chin into a pocket. Flamenco's pocket fruit sounds amazing at first. I mean, everybody loves pockets, and the more the better. In Marineford, we saw him literally pull a massive hammer out of his chin like some cartoon hammer space. He can stash weapons, snacks, or basically anything he wants in there. In theory, that's unlimited storage at his disposal. The problem is, the fruit itself doesn't make you stronger. It only gives you storage. Whatever power you bring to a fight depends entirely on what you packed ahead of time. Flamenco used it for some surprise hammer swings, but only against literal fodder. And while we haven't seen a clear limit, it's safe to assume you're not pulling a battleship out of your chin. So yeah, it's useful, but my man Usopp can also pull out whatever he wants even without this devil fruit. So it's not that special. It's perfect for smuggling and carrying gear though. So far, we've been talking about fruits that are more like you could do worse. But up next, we're getting to the ones where you really can't do worse. For example, take Vanderdecken 9's Mark fruit. It's one of those powers that looks dangerous at first, but falls apart when you break it down. The user has to physically touch someone with their hand to mark them, and only then will anything they throw automatically home in on that target. And even once the target is marked, the ability has strict limits. You can only mark living beings, not objects, and each hand can only hold one mark at a time. Yes, if you touch someone else with the same hand, the original mark is gone. If the target dies, the link is broken. And if the user is knocked out, the projectiles immediately stop chasing and just drop. Of course, none of this means the fruit is useless, because in theory, this power could be used for mass destruction. Like when Vanderdecken used it to throw Noah, a ship the size of an island, at Princess Shirahoshi. However, that was a very niche use case. Noah is a ridiculously large ship. Decken only pulled off that throw because it was already in the ocean. He simply shoved Noah and let the ocean's buoyancy do the heavy lifting. That is never going to work above ground. Characters who can actually throw big stuff don't need to mark someone. They'll just throw something at you the moment they see you. All of this makes the fruit situation. You have to land a touch first, you can only hold a couple of marks, the throws can be intercepted, and the fruit gives you nothing in terms of close combat or defense. Foxy's slow fruit lets him freeze opponents in slow motion for about 30 seconds. That is, if the beam actually lands. Honestly, the beams feel more like a plot device to make the Davy back fight arc work than a power built for real combat. On paper, it could make for a solid support ability, but it has some massive flaws. The beams can be reflected, Foxy himself isn't immune to them, and if you disable his arms, he can't fire them at all. On top of that, the beam covers only a limited area, meaning wide-range attacks or multiple enemies can easily overwhelm it. It works for surprise attacks or ganging up on someone with the boys, but it's very easy to counter as long as the opponent doesn't play by Foxy's stupid rules. Still, it's a good support ability. And speaking of support, how about a power that only really works if you have someone watching your back? Buffalo's spin fruit doesn't work in many scenarios without support. It's one of those powers that looks goofy and ends up just as goofy in practice. The fruit lets him spin any part of his body like a propeller. We've seen him twirl his neck hair into helicopter blades to fly, spin his arms to create wind attacks, and even whirl his legs to roll around like wheels. Now, flight is always handy, and he did manage to carry Baby 5 around while airborne, so it's not completely useless. But the problems show up fast. If anyone strong enough grabs those spinning parts, it's game over. For example, in chapter 744, Cairo simply stopped Buffalo's head from rotating and snapped his neck. Even his flight, which should have been a saving grace, only worked because he had a weapons master like Baby 5 covering him. Otherwise, he would have been completely vulnerable to just about any level of attack. But if you thought spinning your hair to fly was awkward, let's talk about what happens when you weaponize your body weight. Yes, let's move on to Miss Valentine's Kilo fruit. This fruit allows her to shift her weight anywhere from 1 kilogram to 10,000 kilograms in an instant. Sounds deadly at first. I mean, who wants 10 tons dropping on their head? But the reality is pretty underwhelming. The fruit still doesn't seem to change the user's density or give her any extra durability. So when she tries to throw her weight around, it doesn't mean much against strong fighters. Luffy and Zoro were clowning on her without even taking her seriously. And they were busy fighting each other at the same time. And being super light isn't always an advantage either, because anyone faster than you would just absolutely destroy you. Plus, her devil fruit gets completely outclassed by Mach-Vice and his Tun fruit later in the story, who can pull off the same moves but with even higher weight. Mach-Vice's highest weight is 10,000 tons, which is equivalent to 10 million kilograms. Moving on, we have the Rust fruit, which was eaten by Marine Captain Shu. Honestly, this fruit should be on the list of One Piece's strongest devil fruits. The only reason it's here among the worst is because it's basically just a plot device, and I really hate plot devices. It allows the user to rust and corrode any metal they touch. We saw Shu crumble Zoro's sword, Yubashiri, into dust with just a single touch. But here's why this fruit is so OP. It's not limited to metal. It can corrode flesh or pretty much any surface the user makes contact with. That's insanely overpowered. Imagine having one of the strongest devil fruits, and your only role in the story is for Zoro to get a cooler sword later on. The fruit even makes Shu's body immune to fists or metal weapons, since they just corrode on impact. But it's still far from perfect, as it doesn't help against fire, explosions, or ranged attacks. I mean, all it took for my man Usopp to beat this guy was firing one of his shots. And on top of that, if a swordsman uses haki, the power won't even work on their blades. Next up is the berry fruit, eaten by the Marine Captain Very Good. This fruit lets the user turn their body into into a bunch of floating spheres, kind of like berries, which also makes them immune to blunt attacks. Sounds familiar, right? That's because it's basically a weaker version of Buggy's Chop Chop fruit. Unlike the Chop Chop fruit, it seems that the user's body can only be split once, and the balls cannot be separated into smaller parts. Any defensive advantage this gives comes at the cost of strength and speed, as we saw when Zoro was able to easily block Very Good's attacks with his swords. And the user needs to keep track of all of their parts, as there's no easy way to recover one if an opponent grabs it. Frankie easily defeated Very Good by simply grabbing his head. Now, we've always heard the wheel is the most important invention in human history, but I don't think the same can be said about Captain Shiranguru's Wheel fruit. This fruit gives the user the ability to turn their arms and legs into spinning wheels for rapid movement and charging attacks. But in practice, it's painfully one-dimensional. If you're not spinning, you're literally stuck with wheels for limbs, which are terrible for blocking, grabbing, or holding a weapon. Your attacks also only travel in straight lines, so anyone with even basic reflexes can just sidestep and counter while you roll by. It's such a weak idea that even the anime thought it wasn't worth animating. In the anime version of Chapter 428, they actually cut the fruit out entirely and just gave Sharanguru a random sword instead. Alright, now this next fruit is just completely worthless, depending on who eats it. It's the human fruit eaten by Chopper. This fruit might be cool for your pet, but not for you. And yes, I know Oda joked in the SBS of Volume 20 that a human fruit could make you more human, like enlightened, but come on. Anyone with basic reading comprehension can tell he was just trolling. If you really want to be enlightened, just read a book, go on a walk, or help people, or something. For a regular human like you and me, this fruit does nothing, except make you lose the ability to swim. It's the clearest example of a devil fruit whose value depends entirely on the user's species. It's also pretty crazy that only 4 Straw Hats have devil fruits, and 2 of those fruits made it onto this list. Anyway, it's time for the finale. We've saved the absolute bottom of the barrel for last. These are the top 3 worst devil fruits that are so bad, it feels almost criminal that they exist. For example, there's the Mut fruit, model Dachshund. It's a devil fruit that was eaten by a bazooka. Yeah, you heard that right. Mr. Four's bazooka Lasso ate this zone fruit and basically became a dog cannon hybrid. Now, on paper, that sounds hilarious and kind of awesome, but in this case, Lasso's single defining on-screen ability is that it gets a runny nose and sneezes, which makes it fire cannonballs. That's literally it. Peak Baroque Works nonsense. Plus, dachshunds aren't exactly apex predators. They're small, weak, and prone to sickness, which is why Lasso is always sniffling, sneezing, and looking like he needs a vet more than a battlefield. And yes, that sickness is a major weakness in battle. Chopper literally beat him by stuffing his runny nose with sand, making him sneeze and misfire into Miss Merry Christmas's own tunnels. And honestly, at that point, a regular bazooka would have been better. Okay, this next fruit's gonna make you hate the cool-ass, badass docking that Frankie and the boys always want to do, but Robin wanted no part of. It's Charlotte Nushi's Pile fruit, which lets him fuse with other people into one big combined body. When he merges with his siblings, they get larger and stronger. But if that big fused form takes damage, everyone inside feels it, and the whole thing can break apart instantly. And that's literally all it does. If you don't have anyone to pile with, it's useless. The thing is, you need willing participants. It works for Charlotte Nushi because he's one of Big Mom's decuplets. That's him plus 9 siblings, all born on the same day. He lucked out having a whole squad of identical partners who can willingly fuse with him. Also, can we talk about how crazy it is that Big Mom carried 10 kids at once? And you guys still rank Kaido's endurance above hers? Now, it's definitely hard to top the Pile fruit in terms of sheer uselessness. But don't worry, we can still go lower. Yes, the moment you've been waiting for, the absolute worst devil fruit in all of One Piece. Forgive my French, but this is literally the creme de la creme of bad fruits. It's the jacket fruit that was eaten by Kelly Funk. This is a paramecia that allows the user to turn into a full-body jacket that can be worn by a host. The user can then control the host's body and use their strength and speed. You eat this fruit and you stop being a person. You become a piece of clothing. You can't use the fruit's power to fight on your own. You can't run. You can't do anything unless you find someone to wear you. It's the most humiliating, pathetic, and dependent power in all of One Piece. I mean, what are you gonna do against an enemy? Turn to your brother and ask him to just put you on? And even if your brother does wear you, it's not you who'll be fighting. It's him. You're still just a piece of cloth. Seriously, how the hell did Oda even come up with this? And there you have it, the 22 worst devil fruits in One Piece. If you enjoyed the breakdown, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. It helps a ton and lets me keep making videos like this. And hey, if I missed the fruit you hate the most, just drop it in the comments below.